okay, so I thought you wanted to discuss the topic of why ETs aren't choosing to expose themselves and land.
Oh man, there were several I brought up, but yeah, we can go into that one for sure. Um, yeah, feels good. um, so there are a number of reasons, and of course, I'm not the only one that covers these, but I have had direct experiences, I perceive, um, at least with beings directly that have demonstrated some of these principles. And one of them, and probably the primary one, is have you ever been around someone who, the moment they look at you, you may not even know them, but the moment they look at you, you know they can see right through you and see even
A
the
few
things
times. Has it
that
been
you
a
are.
few times?
Yeah. I don't know if it was this way for you, but for most people, when that happens, it's really intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
Because we like, as humans, in the game of free will and healthy boundaries, we like our secrets, we like our boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We like to have a say over how quickly we reveal ourselves to people. It's
Mm-hmm. We like to feel like we have control.
yeah, it's rooted in old survival instinct games, that sort of thing. It's not necessarily inherently wrong, but it is something that as individuals and as a collective species, we'll have to learn how to operate in a higher form
Mm-hmm.
of in order to handle integrating with beings that are, and real quick, when I say integration, because some people hear that term, but they don't really, I should probably clarify what I'm speaking of. Integration is the process of bringing together pieces of something to create a harmonized, synergized whole.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so these beings often, especially if they're space traveling, you have to be this way even to survive. They are often so well integrated, which means they've taken the time to learn about themselves individually and collectively, about their deep shadows, their unconscious aspects, or let's say aspects that for most of us remain unconscious,
Mm-hmm.
and they've learned to put it all together into this harmonized, holistic form,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you imagine, you know, you have a lot of people that they play the manifestation game. Their mind is like focusing on creating something, right? But
Yeah.
either they never really get there, or maybe they seem to, and then they slip way back, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And it's usually because the unconscious aspects of themselves hasn't actually been embraced to a point where they can, and you talk a lot about doing this
Yeah.
in your words, which I really appreciate. The unconscious aspects themselves have not been made, have not been held space for by the conscious being, their conscious being. And so that energy is always pulling in the direction it had already set in motion. So
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to go this way, but the unconscious, which has way more energetic capacity and power, is pulling this way.
Mm-hmm.
And so these beings have gone through the process of bringing all these pieces of themselves together, which means they are hyper aware, including on the levels we usually aren't aware of, which can be very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
They are very powerful energetically because all of their being is going in the direction of their focus. So when
100% of their energy is dedicated to whatever they're trying to do versus having parts of their energy field that are trying to go in another direction.
exactly, yeah. So they are in the, basically whenever one of these beings sits there, like let's say they land, and the friendliest possible ET lands, walks up to a crowd full of people, looks at them, just observing them,
Mm-hmm.
and their power is so immense and shines light right through every possible boundary those people could have.
That
It's
people get
very
really
likely.
freaked out and think that they're intimidating and dangerous because they feel threatened, because they feel like
Exactly.
they don't have control over
Exactly.
how they're being perceived by this being. Yeah.
That's on a
It makes us feel very vulnerable, and whenever we feel vulnerable, like we can't control a situation, we go on the attack or the defense. So
Yes. And on the good end of things, it'll just be really intimidating and take some time to warm up, kind of like taming a wild animal. I hate to
Yeah.
say, but that's kind of how it is. On the not so good things, you have that where it's like immediately the mind in that defense mechanism starts creating illusory perceptions based on reactive emotions and fear,
Hmm.
in order to find a reason to present these beings as enemies when they may not be at all.
Hmm.
And then the worst case scenario is we have a complete psychological meltdown and turn into a fumbling mess on babbling on the ground,
Yeah.
which can happen.
I think
um,
it's also because people we fear the unknown and we fear what we project onto the unknown. And so when you come in with what you call an alien or ET races, they're an unknown, and so we want to be able to control that so that we can feel secure in that.
hmm that is definitely a part of that puzzle. Absolutely, yeah. But also, we're afraid of our own unknown,
Yeah.
and these beings would represent that coming to stare us straight in the face and say hi. Pay attention now. So even if it's not that they themselves are that, the fact that they would come here would force us into that.
So you feel that many of these the beings that make it to this Earth planet, that they are aware of their effect on humans, and they deliberately keep their distance because they don't want to trigger that type of fear reaction from humanity, or do you think it's something else?
I highly suspect that what you just said is accurate for at least the vast majority, of both neutral and benevolent. There's also self-protection at play, because yeah, if we do go on the attack, it's possible we could hurt not only them to some degree. I mean, I know that in most cases their technology is so far beyond even our secret technologies that it's kind of laughable we'd even try, but we could
Hmm.
hurt ourselves in the process.
Yeah.
And we could also do massive damage. I know Dr. Greer talks about this a bit, and I've read other sources, and it makes sense to me on a both logical and intuitive level. Like say nuclear weapons,
Hmm.
because of the way it interacts with the subatomic world, that energy, we can affect parallel. I personally do suspect parallel realities and universes are real, and we
Hmm.
can affect a lot more than our own because of how it goes to that subatomic world and then has a domino effect out.
Hmm.
So without really knowing it, dropping those bombs in World War II, and then a lot of the testing we've done has probably had far-reaching impact, further than we're normally consciously aware
more
of.
than they're consciously aware. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think when playing with these types of technologies, it's like children playing with big guns and toys. They don't fully understand the impact of what they're doing yet. So, I mean, and humanity is trying to figure this out, but we're not there yet.
yeah.
So yeah, this is a really interesting topic. I went ahead and watched most of that Greer documentary by Dr. Stephen Greer.
Serious?
Yeah,
Okay.
watched most of that last night. That was a really fascinating documentary. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing that.
it's pretty intense.
Wow. Yeah.
I definitely recommend Unacknowledged. It goes more into even more hard evidences, not so much of ETs directly, but more so of what's going on behind the scenes in response to.
Mhm.
And it also has interviews with other very, very credible characters. The astronaut Edgar Mitchell, which passed not too long ago, is in there quite a bit, and he helped Dr. Greer get into talk with, the Pentagon. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very revealing documentary, and I definitely recommend following it up with that one. Um, I'm not going to say, because I'm still exploring my own reality tunnel, and I'm not going to say with 100% that there's any one person presenting this information or even any one group that at this time I'm in 100% agreement with.
Mhm.
But I would say that so far, Dr. Greer, and then of course some of the stuff from Bashar, which I mentioned before, has come the closest to my own experiential perception of things. So I'll just leave it at that. As with everything, people have to decide for themselves ultimately.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think coming into topics like this, a healthy dose of skepticism is good to have. For me, what I like to say is that there's cynicism, and then there's being gullibly too open-minded. I think skepticism is a healthy middle ground.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
skepticism being that you don't know if it is or is not true, and so you're curious, and you're willing to entertain either possibility, and you're going to go and research it and look into it before you draw conclusions.
I actually have a funny story about that concerning Dr. Greer that you'll enjoy. Whenever he took us out training, he's very big on not calling everything you want to a UFO, which unfortunately during the time that I was training people, there were many times where every little light that moved in the sky in a way they didn't expect was a UFO. And it turns out, if they had actually taken the time to print out satellite charts and things like that, like we were taught,
Mm-hmm.
it would have been a satellite or a space
Mm-hmm.
station. But people tend to kind of fix things a bit to see it the way they want to at times, and that's one reason why I actually got kind of tired of doing the training bit. I was like, I got tired of trying to get people to be a little bit more rational. Even though we did also experience some very real, very freaky experiences that were, to me, amazing. Actually scared a couple people to the point of not wanting to come back out. But and it wasn't harmful at all. Nothing like that. It's
Yeah, it
just,
just shook their version of reality so much. It's one thing to go
yeah,
exploring it, and then it's another thing to actually experience it to the point where your entire reality is shaken like that. It can be very unsettling. I can see why people would want to run away from that for a while.
absolutely, yeah. I've even experienced a few things and you know me, so I can say this with you. You know how open-minded and fluid I am with things concerning wild reality alterations. I've still experienced some things that were like, whoa, I need a minute,
Yeah.
because it shook me. But
Mhm.
again, not really feeling threatened as though there was any malintent, but just the intensity of it.
Yeah, and the way it just it draws your whole version of reality into question, and makes you have to start to reassess everything you thought you knew.
Hmm.
And that could
On
be
a very tangible level.
yes, yes.
Yes.
It's kind of like, you might think, now this is an extreme example. I can't say this has happened in me personally, but, if for an example, you think you want to see an ET, a person in person, you think you want to see physical proof of it phasing in front of you or something. And then it happens, and you'd be like shitting your pants kind of thing. It would be like, oh my God. There's a part of me that thinks I want it, and there's another part of me like, I don't think I want that to happen. Could I handle that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And point in case, I'm going to finish this story about Dr. Greer because it goes right along with that. And you now added another part to it.
Okay.
Um, so at one point, when we were out there, we saw all kinds of stuff. And of course, in Sirius, some of it is documented. Um, but there was one point where there was this light moving over, and we hadn't had a chance yet to look at the satellite charts. And Dr. Greer, like some people were like, "Look, there's one," and he was like, "I think that's probably a satellite." And then it starts strobing really fast and like moving rapidly all over the
Wow.
sky. And he's like, "Oh, guess I was wrong." And he wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't apologetic because he did something mature, and that was healthy skepticism.
Mm-hmm.
And it also shows that any of us, it's good to maintain that because at any point we might, slip up a little bit. It happens. And that's also why he taught everyone bring your experiences together and discuss them, because we help each other distill the most grounded truth and the different facets of that most grounded truth. He was huge on group cohesion, conscious group cohesion, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding why that's important. And open communication, even if what you think you receive is silly or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
The second part of that story, let's see. Oh, he had us at the second to the last night contact these beings, and we had to be very honest with ourselves about what we're actually ready to experience, the intensity,
Mm-hmm.
and present that to them. And what I found out from a number of the members who did that, when they were finally really honest with themselves, they were like, I don't think I can handle what I originally thought I could.
Mm-hmm.
And these beings really respected that, and so interacted with them to the point that they could handle, that they
Mm-hmm.
felt comfortable with. So yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to think about it as an abstract concept, but once it actually happens, how would we really react? And I've been trying to ask myself this question, and like, how would I really react? How would I feel? Because I wouldn't know how I truly feel until it happened, and it might just be overwhelming. So, or maybe it'd be really cool and overwhelming. Yeah.
Maybe.
Wow. So I find it really interesting in the clip that you introduced us to, the one that you were there with Dr. Greer for, where the beautiful golden craft came in, and then the military jets came in. So what's your, do you want to even speculate on why the military would be trying to chase after this craft?
There are so many possibilities. I don't know if this is because their weapon systems were shut down or if they were simply given orders to observe and not engage.
Mm-hmm.
But when that military jet came in, it had afterburners on. It seemed to be on an engagement course because it went directly for this craft. And it got, from our point of view, what looked like, obviously it wasn't inches, but it got to where, from my point of view, it looked like almost an inch or two away from the craft before it finally. And I am having a hard time understanding why a pilot would do that without firing a weapon, especially if they're just there to observe. It's possible that this isn't the first rodeo and they knew what the likelihood was that this thing was going to move when they got close.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of possibilities. It's possible that the weapon system was jammed. They might have been never really going to hurt the pilot or anything like that, but they might have been kind of fucking with him a little bit, just like lock up his weapon system and his controls and then give it back at the last minute, but not actually hurting him.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes these beings want to be like, look, we're being nice. I don't know what you want from us. We have a lot more capability than you could possibly realize, and we're trying to be friendly. We're trying to be diplomatic here.
Yeah.
So that may be the case.
Yeah. Of course, this is all speculation. We just don't know.
What I do know is that when and multiple people said they experienced this, whenever this craft came over, before the jet showed up, and close to the point that the jet got to it, there was this feeling of just like overwhelming peace and calm. To me, because it had a slightly different quality of texture of feeling than the standard experience I have with peace and love. Even though I've gotten more this direction a bit, there's a difference between how it feels biologically with my experience and then whenever it's technologically assisted. The particular frequency was so coherent. And you know what coherence means? It's like the difference between a light bulb and a laser.
Mm-hmm.
A laser's coherent light. It was so coherent and so clear and sustained, and it felt like it had this really beautiful merger between this biological, spiritual emission of this feeling
Mm-hmm.
and technological assistance to make it even more profoundly impactful and more coherent and like sustainable. So it helped like set this field. And that may, because everything ultimately is frequency playing itself out in shape and form,
Mm-hmm.
that may have been one reason why the jet couldn't attack the vessel, because of that frequency dominating that space. Whereas an act of an aggression simply could not happen.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
It would be, too much of an act of aggression would be a completely different frequency, resonance frequency,
Yeah.
than the frequency of the intention that the craft was coming in with.
Exactly.
Yeah, because in order for something negative to happen, technically you have to be some way a vibrational match to it in some way. There's a whole bunch of spectrum of how you could be a match to that. But
hmm And these beings are, at least the ones I've interacted with, for the most part, they're really well aware of all of that and have been working with it for who knows how long. It's part of who they are, and it's necessary again for both space and also parallel reality exploration. Like you have to understand this stuff. You have to be able to apply it and get it. Um, and the more you can, not only psychologically and biologically, and also um, technologically, the more you can integrate the parts of your experience with that understanding, the easier it is not only to explore other areas, but also to do it in a way that you maintain a sense of harmony and safety for yourself and others involved.
mm-hmm.
The challenge, of course, the one challenge behind this is kind of coming back on that other experience with the craft and the jet. The one challenge that I can see happening, especially on higher echelons of the paramilitary, where the old guard are, they're very steeped in the very like warlike mindset usually, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not I'm not demeaning them.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important because to them they have good reasons for being, and it's understandable. I mean, just look at our
When
history.
you look at it from their perspective, you can see why they're doing it, because they just haven't moved to being able to encompass another perspective as well. So, and all perspectives have value, in my opinion.